Well, hello there, everybody. My name is Harold George. I'm the Extension Services Manager with the St. Johns County Public Library System, and I am so pleased to be joined by Paul Jones of the Ancient City Astronomy Club. Hey, Paul.
Hey, Harold. How are you today?
I'm doing all right. I'm really glad to see you. We've always had such a good time working with you at the amphitheater, at the night market, and in other programs. So thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure indeed.
Just as a little bit of background, there is a program called NASA at My Library, which has been going on for a couple of years. There are 75 library systems across the United States that are part of that program. And I'm very proud and pleased to say that the St. Johns County Library System is a NASA at My Library library. So we've been doing our best to promote all the cool things that are happening through NASA, all the cool things that are happening in the sky above you, and all the cool things that the Ancient City Astronomy Club is doing. And so, Paul, I just would like to pick your brain about some things that are coming up. Okay. And any ideas as far as you might have to suggest what people can do to enjoy the celestial wonders above us, especially right now when we all seem to have a lot of good free time to go outside and look at the sky.
Sounds good. I'm glad to do it.
Well, being that, so something that was cool that happened on Wednesday night, May 6th, so that would have been a little bit, I guess about a week prior to this program, is that the Starlink satellite chain went over our part of the world.
Yes.
And that's something that I'd heard about and I'd never witnessed before. And it's really cool and it's really interesting, but there are people who are concerned about the idea that there might be something like 42,000 satellites being put into space.
Right.
But what's interesting too is they are making an effort to darken the satellite so that it won't interfere with the experience of astronomers, both amateur and professional, worldwide.
Yes.
So not to put you too much on the spot, but do you have any ideas about that, and what does it do to make life interesting for you?
Well, it's kind of a two-edged sword, Harold. It's almost like the best of times, worst of times scenario for astronomy. It really only adversely affects the ones who are taking photographs of the skies at night, astrophotographers. Their images will often be invaded by these streaks of light from these Starlink satellites going by, and really gives them a fit on their long exposure photographs that they need to get these beautiful images of these galaxies and so forth. However, if you're just observing with binoculars or just casually with your naked eye, they're actually very, very interesting to see. There's usually long chains of them going through the sky. They look pretty much like normal satellites do. It's just that there are more of them. And they go by in processions, almost like a parade goes by. And sometimes you can see several of them in the sky at the same time. Sometimes they're having interesting motions with one another, kind of swirling around one another like a miniature solar system going over your head. It's really quite interesting to see. Some folks who are not used to it and don't know about it are scared because it's so different than what they're normally used to.
I actually have seen online, like through Facebook, somebody who, it seems like it always happens somewhere in the Southwest where people will be like, did anybody happen to notice a long string of lights going across the sky?
Yep.
And fortunately, as most often is the case, there is a real okay explanation for what's happening. One of the things that's been really a lot of fun is Leslie Good, who is in Extension Services, who's the person that applied for the NASA at My Library program and won it for us. She has really enlightened me to so many things that have been happening up in the sky. You know, I have a tracker on my phone for the International Space Station. The Starlink thing, she told me the other night that she counted 16 of them before they grew too faint to see. But there's so much more happening that's been happening for eons up in the sky. And it seems like the summertime, I mean, year-round might be cool, but it seems like in the next few months, there's some real opportunities for us to catch something cool up in the heavens.
Oh, yes,
you want to highlight any of those for us?
Oh gosh, how much time do we have?
Well, let's hear what let's hear what you would say are Paul's must not miss sightings.
Okay, right now in the early evening, in addition to the Starlink satellites, which will give quite a show, we also have our very bright sister planet Venus shining away like a beacon over in the western sky. And she is absolutely beautiful right now. She's very close to the Earth and reflects a lot of sunlight because she's completely covered in clouds over the entire surface of the planet. So the amount of sunlight bouncing off of her is great, and we get a beautiful view. She's by far the brightest thing in the sky other than the moon. And if you have a telescope, definitely take a look at Venus through the telescope, because right now she is in a very thin crescent phase where you see almost like a miniature crescent moon through the telescope.
Wow. See, that's just it. We don't think of the other planets as going through these phases, but there's a lot of there's a lot we share in common with the planets as far as how they move through the universe.
Both Venus and Mercury, being in between the Earth and the Sun, will undergo those phases just like the moon does, just little miniature versions of the moon.
Wow.
So we got that.
Okay.
Also on the 16th of May, which is a Saturday night, or actually, I should say a Saturday morning. You have to be up about 4 or 5 in the morning, but the planets Mars, Saturn, and Jupiter will form a beautiful grouping with the crescent moon just a little bit before sunrise or twilight in the morning. And it's supposed to be really spectacular. The astronomy sources are saying that the moon will be directly underneath Saturn and Jupiter, which are right side by side right now. So it looks like a big smiley face in the sky.
Well, so here's a suggestion that might be a bit of a challenge, but if I know you, you know the good ways to do this. So one of the things that's been, it's been really helpful through this current experience of social isolation and being careful about how we gather in groups or not. Most of us have been, availing ourselves to the backyard view from our house. Are there places that you know of that people might want to go to have a look at this, that they could still put a good amount of space between themselves and other people so that we're all doing this in a healthy way?
Absolutely. The beach is always a very, very nice place. And at 4 o'clock in the morning, it's usually not very crowded. Another place I like to go to right downtown is the Fort Greene at the Castillo.
Oh, wow. Of course.
If you position yourself on the northern part of the Fort Greene, take a camera with you and shoot back over the, I believe it's the St. Charles Bastion, the big one that's on the picture behind you there, Harold.
Oh, okay.
You can get the moon and the planets behind that. And if you have a little twilight in the sky like that picture behind you, it is a magnificent photograph.
So yeah, this is the picture you're referring to is the fort right there.
Yes. Yes.
And that's the tower that sticks, I guess you'd say, furthest out towards the bay.
Correct. The
cool.
northeast corner bastion, I believe it is.
So being between that part of the fort and, say, Water Street, that area would be a good spot. Yes. Okay, cool. Well, thanks.
Closer to the fort, yep.
I'm definitely going to spread the word. And the good thing is that we can enjoy what the solar system has to offer without really causing any kind of problems or risk to ourselves or anybody else.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. The main planets are pretty easily visible from anywhere. The only problem is some folks have a lot of trees in their yard.
Sure.
So the trees will block your view. That's my problem where I live. I have to go somewhere to see it because all I see are the bottom of oak trees.
which is nice most times of the day. But so if I remember what you said correctly, somewhere around 4 to 5 a.m. on the morning of Saturday, May 16th is the best time to take advantage of this.
Morning.
Cool.
That's the morning the moon will be there closest.
The moon will be, okay. What else are you looking forward to look in the sky that's coming out?
Well, good of you to ask, Harold. This is a potentially very interesting month for astronomers right now, especially in the northern hemisphere, because a recently discovered comet called Comet Swan, S-W-A-N, has been putting on quite a show for the folks in the southern hemisphere over the last couple of weeks. And starting about the 15th of May, it is, quote unquote, supposed to be visible for us here in the Northern Hemisphere for about 8 days.
Oh, wow.
So from about the 15th to the 23rd of February, we're expecting, hoping that we will be February. I said May. I mean
That's
May,
okay.
sorry.
I was going to confirm, hey, it's hard to keep track of what day of the week it is.
It is. But no, 15 to 23 May, it should be visible in the southwestern sky in the evening.
Wow.
And then again, the next morning in the northeast.
This sounds awesome. I think of Hale-Bopp back in 1997 and how visible it was for such an long amount of time. Of course, this would be a much briefer period of time, but do you think that this comet will be comparable at all as far as what we'll be able to see? Will we be able to see it with the naked eye?
That's a loaded question, Harold.
I'm good at that.
Hopefully it will. My understanding just as of yesterday that some of the observers in the Southern Hemisphere were starting to see some evidence of it fading or possibly breaking up. Comets are extremely unpredictable about what they're going to do. So we're hopeful. And all I can say is if folks want to get the latest, greatest information, visit our Facebook page, Friends of the Ancient City Astronomy Club. We put up daily updates on what's going on, and that's the best way to keep up with it.
Now, something I know that you folks have been doing, I think, out at the county fairgrounds are the stargazing gatherings.
Yes.
But are those on hold for right now?
They are, unfortunately.
It makes sense.
It just to be, safe and super cautious, but as soon as possible, we will resume those. The Ancient City Astronomy Club tries to schedule 2 public welcome star parties every month.
That sounds great.
We pick the 2 Saturdays that are closest to new moon because there's more dark sky available and we have a better viewing time. Of course, weather is an issue.
Cloudy skies.
Quite often.
Sure.
But we do our best, and we're on kind of like almost like an old phone tree that we used to do where we alert each other, hey, it's looking good, we're going to be able to do it, or clouds are getting worse, we may have to postpone. It tends to come down to about a 2 to 4 hour yay or nay call sometimes.
Well, I know it's only May, but I've been thinking a lot about August because I know that if I say it correctly, Perseids meteor shower is in August.
Correct.
So I have a question, and it's amazing how much for a librarian I don't know, and probably part of that is because it's all about need to know. But I remember the first time I experienced that was back in the early 90s, and we sat out on Volano Beach in the evening, maybe 9 or 10 o'clock, and saw a lot. And I'm wondering if I'm remembering that correctly now, because it seems that usually when people talk about seeing the meteor showers, they're like, start watching around 1 a.m. Is this something that changes periodically, or is that pretty par for the course?
That's pretty much a good standard rule, Harold. There are a couple of meteor showers which will perform very well in the earlier evening, but by far the majority of them, Perseids included, do better after midnight.
Okay.
The problem with the Perseids this year in 2020 is that we will have a fairly bright moon rising about midnight, and that light from that moon will kind of knock out a lot of the fainter meteors. You'll still see the brighter ones, but there won't be the number of meteors that you would see if there were no moon in the sky. But it will still be interesting to watch for sure.
Absolutely. And so if I've heard, there was a meteor shower that we just passed through, or perhaps we're still experiencing it, just not on the same scale, that was related somehow to Halley's Comet?
Yes, absolutely. That is the Eta Aquarion meteor shower. It occurs every year in early May, usually for about 4 or 5 nights around the 6th of May. I shouldn't say nights, I should say mornings. Another 4 to 5 a.m. in the morning event. But if you go to the beach or somewhere with a good southeastern horizon away from trees and away from the city lights, it's possible to see 15 to 20 very long, bright, colorful meteors streak across the sky from the 8 Aquariids, and they are, as you said, pieces of Halley's Comet.
Oh, wow. Which, if if I'm remembering correctly, the last time anybody on Earth saw Halley's Comet was about 1986.
Correct. Next time,
So,
2040 something.
so 34 years ago, and we're still going through the tail of that comet, so to speak, or the
Yes.
trail.
Yes. Meteor showers are my specialty, the area in amateur astronomy that I really enjoy. And meteor showers happen every year at the same time. They are the trails of the comet that have particles that the comet leaves behind when it comes around close to the sun. And they go orbiting around and around and around. And over time, those particles become distributed completely around the orbit of the comet. And when the Earth comes along and it intersects that, we get a meteor shower, like clockwork.
Well, I was going to say the solar system, the universe is really functioning as a giant timepiece in that respect. You can, use so many calculations to predict with, it sounds pretty darn good reliability when we're going to experience these things.
Yes, yes. A lot of astronomy boils down to some very complex and complicated mathematics, which we don't really emphasize in the astronomy club, but it works just like a clockwork. It really does. It's amazing.
Well, I'm grateful for all those people who like math, because they make sure that people like me don't miss out on the cool things.
I'm with you on that, Harold. It's not my strong suit either, but
total respect there.
yes.
So this is kind of an analogy I heard on NPR yesterday, I think it was, or maybe it was earlier. People are reporting that they seem to be hearing the birds, flocks of birds everywhere, a lot louder than they're used to hearing. And of course, what the researchers said is actually the birds aren't louder. It's just that we're slowing down. The life is quieter. That actually birds sing louder when there is more noise out there. So my analogy back to that. Sorry, I'm getting too long to my question.
No, that's okay.
I'm convinced that I can see the stars better in the past few weeks than I've been able to. And I wonder, do you think they've talked about how some pollution has shown a decline because of the lack of, automobiles, manufacturing, that sort of thing. Do you think that's had an impact on our ability to see, or is it just that we've had some really great weather and low humidity right now?
Excellent question. I would say there possibly could be a minimal positive impact in the astronomy area from the lack of ozone in the air from all of the cars that are on the road. However, another aspect of pollution that affects astronomy very much and is no better at all is light pollution.
True that.
Caused by the millions of individual street lights and building lights and so forth that we have in all the civilized world now, not just our country. And it is greatly impacting astronomy all around the world and continues to get worse every day.
Well, and I was just talking with one of our coworkers that there is, if I remember, there is a place towards southern part of Florida, Kissimmee Park, I think, that is actually considered a dark spot.
There are a couple of them in our area. Actually, that's one, you're correct. There's one near the Okefenokee Swamp in South Georgia called Foster Park. And there's another one that our club goes to about 30 miles west of Gainesville called the Chiefland Astronomy Village.
Wow, I'd not heard of that. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure, yeah. It was a large tract of property that was purchased by a group of amateur astronomers. They parceled it all up, and individual people bought sections of it. It encompasses probably hundreds of acres in a large field over about 30 miles west of Gainesville in a very dark sky area. And there are parts of that that are open to the public with permission from the owners ahead of time.
Wow. Do people live there, or is it just the place they go to take in the stars?
It's both.
Okay.
Some do live there year round. Others just own the property. And the gentleman that we work with actually lives in Atlanta.
That is so cool. I remember recently reading about a village in Iceland that was known as a dark city, I guess you might say. Or
Mhm.
it might have been in Scandinavia. You know, my details are loose, but I like the fact that the entire city had dedicated its efforts to maintaining this standard of darkness so that people
Yes.
could come enjoy, stargazing and astronomy in a way that it was good for tourism, if nothing else.
There's a lot of positive things to it. In our country, we have a couple of those cities. Both of the main ones that I know of are in Arizona, of course. Tucson and Flagstaff, Arizona, have both instituted strict restrictions on lighting. Street lights have shields that point the light downward where it doesn't get up into the sky. They use careful practices to only use the light they need and not just go hog wild with it everywhere like we always do around here.
I have a street light at the end of my driveway, which really, as far as street lights go, it's great. But there are times when I wish I had a dimmer switch on that thing so I could
Absolutely.
enjoy that sky a little bit more.
It takes away a lot.
Do they sell lampshades for street lights? Can we get that at IKEA?
I wish they would, Harold.
My last summer, if I remember correctly, and as you can tell, I'm really good at remembering the idea, but not necessarily all the details. If I remember correctly, parts of Switzerland and Austria and perhaps another neighboring countries joined in a collaborative effort during a certain period of time to darken their cities because of peak viewing experiences. And I wonder if you'd heard of that, or if you knew any other times when places around the world are planning something like that.
I had not heard that, but it doesn't really surprise me in Europe. The Europeans are much crazier about astronomy and science than even we are in America. And it's not a surprise to me at all to hear that they're, partnering like that. And I wish America would do that too. Maybe someday we will.
Well, it's quite possible that we'll see a lot of, a resurgence in that, because I do think people here love astronomy. And just like, maybe we hear the birds more because we've just taken the time and less distractions. Maybe I'm seeing the stars better just because I'm taking the time to go out and have a look, which is something I could do year round. I don't need any kind of pause button from the rest of the world to do that, other than just remembering to do it
I
myself.
mean, I'm probably, jaded in my opinion, Harold, but I say that the study and the interest of the stars and amateur astronomy is one of the greatest blood pressure reducers and stress reducers you could ever have.
Well, I think that we can all use more of that. I can remember two things. One was really silly and one was really cool that got me interested in what's floating around above our heads. When I was really small, for some reason, I guess all the kids were restless and bored, and it was nighttime, and my mom was probably really tired of taking care of us. I am the youngest of six. So she asked us if we all wanted to see a comet. And of course, we all wanted to see a comet. So she took us outside with a flashlight and walked us down the street and made us stand there, and then pointed the flashlight on our neighbor's comet and said, "There, now you've seen a comet." And of course, she had a laugh at our expense. But then for days, we wanted to go to the library and see what, a comet was about. So it was good. And I mean, in a weird way, she really inspired us to be curious. And then when I moved to St. Augustine, we're talking like 1975. I'm pretty sure the Ancient City Astronomy Club has been around that long.
We have
Because they used to set up telescopes in the parking lot of the fort.
Yes, we did.
And I went, and one telescope, this gentleman said, "Would you like to see Saturn?" Which I thought, okay. And I remember looking at that telescope, and Saturn was as bright as a light bulb through that telescope. And it just absolutely blew my head off and fascinated me that something so far away could be so visible to us. And from that point forward, I've always been just a little obsessed with the stars.
Well, we love Saturn and astronomy, Harold, because it is probably the #1 attention getter and the #1 experience that people have in astronomy that will hook them for the rest of their lives.
So can you tell me a story that may have been, where did you get your start in this experience? Or is there some moment that you look back as the aha moment that said, this is what I want to do more of and know more about?
I'm a child of the 60s. I grew up in the 60s, and the space program was humming along at top speed, and there were in the news every single day, and launches were going on all the time. I think that I can honestly thank NASA and the space program for my lifelong interest initially in astronomy. And then, of course, I got a small telescope for Christmas one year, found Saturn, and had the same moment you did with Saturn and the rings through a telescope, and that was it. I was hooked for the rest of my life, and I will be.
I guess Saturn is the big poster boy for people obsessed with planets, especially for kids. You know, the NASA at My Library program has been so much fun because it's provided us with lots of cool resources, some funding, which has been very useful for promoting programs. You may have seen that we have done the pop-up planetarium at the amphitheater. Don't know when that's coming back, but it's a really cool thing. And we do have some time left in the experience in the program because we have committed throughout the rest of the year. And I'm just wondering, do you have any concept of what's coming down the line for Ancient City Astronomy Club as far as any planned events? Or do you pretty much build your calendar around what's happening in the sky?
Excellent question. I would say probably both. It would be the answer. We are partnering both with you guys in the library. Mm-hmm. We also partner with Kelly Usia and the Parks and Recs.
Awesome.
To have quarterly star parties at the fairgrounds.
Well, and I know that everybody that I know that has been to those loves it and is looking forward to going back. And I'm definitely going to make a point of getting there myself, because I remember a couple of years ago at the corn maze out at the Sykes Cooper Farm, you folks joined us up, as part of the National Observe the Moon Night.
Yep.
And of course, the weather didn't cooperate. It was a cloudy sky. But the Ancient City Astronomy Club members that were there made the event fun. I don't think that anybody was bored, and we still had a lot to talk about and share with one another. And, it just goes to show you that when there's an interest that brings everybody together, it's always a positive experience. And we appreciate that about you folks.
It is. And we're passionate, Harold. We absolutely love what we do. We love to share. We love to help folks when they're just getting into it. There's, especially with the what telescope to purchase. If you're interested in astronomy and you'd like to buy a telescope, which one is right for you? We help folks with that quite a bit. We meet, not now, but when we get back to normal, we meet on the third Friday of each month at the St. Augustine Beach City Hall meeting room at 7 p.m., the third Friday of the month. Folks are welcome. You don't have to have a telescope. All you have to have is an interest in astronomy. And we will help you with that. The star parties we have, which are, by the way, held at the fairgrounds, not at the fairgrounds themselves, but in the overflow parking lot around the corner.
Oh, yeah. I know where that is.
Main one. Mm-hmm. And we usually have about 10, maybe 12, maybe as many as 15 members come out with telescopes of all sizes, shapes, powers, for folks to look through to get an idea about the differences of telescopes, how they work, why they work, and to expose folks with the different types of observing you can do with telescopes.
I remember as a kid, my mom, for her, she was, in her early 40s when we first landed on the moon and Neil Armstrong took that moonwalk. And she had a really funny perspective about it. She said in some ways it disappointed her because the moon was always this mysterious object in the sky. And of course, I appreciate that idea, but at the same time, I'm like, but how cool was it? And I wonder sometimes, do we take the moon for granted compared to the rest of the planets? Because right now it's pretty darn full. What if I had a telescope at home or even binoculars? what about the moon should I like want to have a look at it other than just because it's pretty and bright? Is there anything that you, when you look at the moon, that you look for or that you find particularly interesting?
Well, the moon is a fascinating thing to look at through a telescope. You see, I mean, it's only quote unquote about 240,000 miles away from us. So,
Yeah.
you know, just next door by cosmic standards. You can get excellent views of the craters, the mountain peaks, the mare or the seas that are there. You can see many surface features. When the sun angle is right, you can catch shadow details of crater rims being cast through the crater and across the mare.
Wow.
It's just a fascinating view. A lot of people love that. The other thing that's really neat about the moon is it will give us some fabulous eclipses sometimes.
I'll tell you what, I'm making plans for, I think it's April of 2024,
Yes.
because I've already, and it's funny, I have some friends that have family that, I think it's Dallas, because if I remember correctly, the next eclipse of such a big magnitude will like come up through Mexico and across the United States, you know, like a northeast way.
Correct.
And I believe it's Dallas area that's gonna see a lot of it. So I've already told everyone I'm going to Dallas in April.
Well, and the nice thing about this upcoming eclipse, Harold,
Yes.
is that it will be almost twice as long a duration as the one we had.
How cool is that?
That one
You know-
lasted tops about 2 minutes and 40 seconds. This one's going to last almost 5 minutes long.
So did you go somewhere? Did you travel to a special place to see the eclipse in August of 2018?
We did. We had about a group of 20, 25 members all end up in Columbia, South Carolina
Oh, cool.
to see it. And we had perfect weather. It was, believe it or not, even though I've been doing amateur astronomy almost 50 years, it was my very first observation of a total solar eclipse. And I cried. It is just unbelievable.
Well, you know what's funny is, again, when I say, like, no matter what there is to see, when you come together for something like this, it's such a cool and positive experience. We had an eclipse viewing event over at the Solomon Calhoun, or the Collier Blocker Pullier Park. Not Solomon Calhoun, but actually the park at the corner of King Street and Holmes Boulevard, there with the archways
Gotcha.
from the Florida Memorial College. And so we gave out eclipse classes. A lot of people came and left. Leslie had set up a live audio feed of what was happening, and we put it on a loudspeaker. And we had a pretty cloudy day. Like, it was just not working out for us. And yet people hung out, and they waited, and they talked. Kids drew with sidewalk chalk. And just as the eclipse for our area, it was going to be partial at best, was reaching its peak, the clouds parted. Like a gift from above, the clouds parted. And I've never heard so many people have such a united expression of joy. It was so much fun, and it was worth every wonder, worry, and wait for that magical moment, because it's just unusual and amazing and overwhelming. And we were grateful.
And it's very well entitled a bucket list item, because it is just something that every human being should see. There's nothing like it anywhere in the universe. It's incredible.
Well, I'm definitely going in 2024 to Dallas. That seems like a long way off, but it'll be worth it.
It is worth it. And we just had a good friend of ours pass away, Dr. Mike Reynolds, PhD in astronomy up in Jacksonville. He had been to every single total solar eclipse that happened anywhere on the planet since 1970.
That's amazing. Now that's what I call
every single one of them.
So he's an astronomy tourist, you might say.
Yes, he had been all over the world. You name the continent, he'd been there just to see the total solar eclipse. I
admire that kind of commitment, and also the permission to be so free and go after something you love so much.
That's right.
That's a beautiful passion. So I'm going to let you go here in a moment, but I wanted to point out or talk about this thing that it's called a star wheel. It's a really cool thing. Yep. And I guess my opinion is, like, if someone can't actually, we have those apps which you use on your phone.
Yes.
Which are kind of cool. Although I can't ever get my app to be really 100% accurate to what I see, in my humble opinion. But do you ever find people still wanting to use something as rudimentary and, you know, tactile as something like this?
Occasionally. It's a little unwieldy to use out in the night in the darkness.
No, there's that.
Kind of flashlight on it or something to see it. And most folks don't realize that when you're using a star wheel, also called a planisphere,
Okay.
if you look at it downward, like you'd read a book or a newspaper, you're reading it exactly opposite to the way it is in the sky. You have to lift it over your head and then look at it from below to align with the sky the way it actually looks.
Well, we think it would be kind of a fun project for the folks at home if they have any young people they'd like to share it with. It looks like this when you get started. So we're going to post a link to this in the comments if anybody wants to print one of these up for themselves or their family members and make one. It's a nice little way of getting people together on a craft and then talking about the stars.
Yep. Let's starter.
We also have some cool NASA stickers. If anybody wants to contact us, let us know. We might find a way to get those to you. And also, we're going to be sharing more resources like the Starlink information. And want to tell everybody that, you know, as soon as we hear that the Ancient City Astronomy Club is up and running with one of their stargazing parties, I'm going to bring a posse of people to come have a look because I've been wanting to do that for a long time.
You will be most welcome. And one of the things we do, Harold, other than telescopes, we have a couple of members who are really good at taking a laser pointer, a very strong, powerful laser pointer, and we point out constellations in the sky.
A laser pointer directed at the night sky.
Yes, we point out every star in every constellation. I'm fortunate enough to know just about every one of them up there. I've been doing this so long. We talk about the North Pole, Polaris, finding Polaris, what the directions are, how stars rise in the east, why they set in the west, how the planets move. We cover a lot of stuff. We talk about the mythology behind the constellations, and that's always very popular, and folks just love that.
Well, you know, one of the things I always discovered, it's like there's so many common idioms and sayings in our culture that come from so many other cultures. And I always like how we often talk about the dog days of summer that usually land around August. It's usually, you know, it's so hot and we're so tired of being so hot. But what I've studied or found out is that the Romans used to believe that the dog star, Sirius, which I think is closer to us in August, was the reason why it was hotter. They actually thought the stars got that close. And so that's where the saying dog days of summer came from.
Okay. That doesn't surprise me. Sirius has been a very important star to a lot of the civilizations coming up through human experience. The Egyptians were also very in tune to the dog star Sirius, and a lot of the agricultural practices revolve around the stars and the moon. So there's an interlinking of a lot of different things. And you should mention Sirius. That's really interesting because it is one of the closest stars to us, to our sun. It's only 8.6 light years away from us, which is very close on cosmic standards. And it is rumored to possibly at some point in its evolution to become a supernova. Certainly not during our lifetime, but.
Well, I'm going to ask you two more questions before I let you go then. And you prompted this. First of all, hopefully this one has a simpler explanation. What exactly is a light year?
A light year is the distance that light travels at the speed of 186,000 miles per second in 1 year.
Wow. So a light year is really a measure of distance more than it is of time.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And it works out, I believe, to approximately 6 trillion miles.
And so 8.5 light years is close when you talk about the universe.
Very close.
Wow. So my other question is, you mentioned a supernova. I think I understand the concept of a supernova, but how would you explain what that is?
The supernova is the last evolutionary life throes of a star that has burned up most of its fuel, its hydrogen fuel, and it's become extremely unstable because it's kind of winking out like a fire that is just about to go out. And stars are a very complex mix of gravity and light. And when that hydrogen fuel begins to burn up, the gravity begins to do some really strange things in the atmosphere of the star. And the supernova basically boils down to an instability in gravity in the star where it literally blows itself up.
Wow.
And that explosion is what we see as a supernova. I know a lot of folks might recognize the story lately about Betelgeuse, the star in Orion that astronomers have been watching about because it's been doing some funny things. And it is one of the stars they suspect will go supernova. So they're postulating when, perhaps even in our lifetime, we might actually get to see Betelgeuse go supernova. And if it were to do so, it would turn night into day for several months at a time.
Wow.
There would be no night for several months.
And how soon do we think this might happen?
Well, it depends on who you talk to. Some folks say it could be as early as immediately.
Oh boy.
Others say it could take another 100,000 years.
Okay, well that averages out in our current day favor. And it sounds like our sun is pretty stable compared to, say, that star?
Our sun is stable. It's a smaller, less massive star than either Sirius or Betelgeuse. So it does not undergo the same tumultuous explosion at its later lifetime. However, it will go to what we call expansion into what is a red giant phase, where the outer atmosphere of our sun will begin to expand outward. And at some point, it will become very uncomfortable on the planet Earth for our ancestors in the billions of years down the road. But we've got another 4 to 5 billion years before that's going to happen.
So we can take that worry off the list. I mean,
Absolutely.
right now.
Absolutely.
I'm glad to hear that. Because there's always something cool happening in the sky. So we want to be able to enjoy it.
There is always something interesting going on up there. And I invite folks to visit our Facebook page, Friends of the Ancient City Astronomy Club. We do our best to try to keep up with it.
Well, and you guys have been a great partner for the St. Johns County Library and helped us so much through our NASA at My Library program. I just want to remind everybody who's feeling a little adventurous and doesn't mind getting up early, 4 to 5 o'clock on Saturday morning. That's May 16th. That's just a few days from now.
Yep.
Get up, go have a look to the northwest.
Well, actually, for the planets and the moon, it would be in the southern sky.
Oops, sorry guys. So let's get that right.
Yep. And of course,
Saturday morning, May 16th, look to the southern skies for this amazing gathering of planets and the moon.
Yep.
And then take yourself out to breakfast if you can find a place that'll serve you. Exactly. Otherwise, go home and get some rest so you can stay up late the next night.
I'm lucky now I'm retired, Harold. I don't have to go to work, but for several years I was observing all night long, going home, getting an hour's nap, and then getting up and going to work.
That's dedication, but I can certainly understand it because it never ceases to fascinate. Something else to keep an eye on that's upcoming is on May 27th, there's going to be a rocket launch, and it's going to be a crewed mission, actually with a space crew going up into the sky, up into space, May 27th in the afternoon around 4:32 p.m. And so while the Space Center over there on Cape Canaveral is not asking people to come and have a look, this is a perfect opportunity to watch a rocket launch from your own backyard. And of course they'll do updates. If you go to KennedySpaceCenter.com, you can see constant updates for the time. Is it a mission go? That sort of thing. If it's delayed a few hours, that'll just improve our ability to see it because it'll be darker. But that's May 27th at 4:32 p.m. And it's going to be a SpaceX mission crew launch. And I think it never gets old to watch those rocket launches. I've been seeing those since I was a kid.
We observe, we go down there quite often, or we did before the current lockdown, to observe them from up close. A place we like to go locally to see them is down in the Matanzas Inlet area on the beach down there, or just a little south of it in the Marineland area. You get some really beautiful views, and you're about 15 miles closer to the Cape, so it looks even better.
I know the bridge over South Street at the end of the south side of the Maria Sanchez Lake is another great viewing spot.
Yep.
There's room enough to keep a safe distance so we can continue to practice all those good habits that are reducing the risks to everybody.
Exactly.
So, and again, if you had a good view from your backyard, look to the southeast around 4:30 in the afternoon of May 27th, and you might see something cool.
It should be cool.
Well, we really are grateful for this time and all this information, and I can't wait for the time that we can all go to a stargazing party, because I've seen you in action when you do your programs. It's always good. It's always interesting. So
thank you.
I appreciate the time you've spent with us today, and I hope that you get many more nights of great stargazing under your belt.
Much appreciated, Harold. You guys take care. Great working with you.
Thank you so much, and thank you to Leslie Good for setting this up. And thank you for everybody for watching.